Welcome everyone to tonight's session on unlocking solar and batteries for Strata. My name's Lana and I'm a Sustainability Officer at Hornsby Shire Council, and I'd like to start by recognising the traditional owners of the Hornsby Shire area, the Darug-Angaringai people, and pay respect to their ancestors and elders past and present, and recognise their continuing connections to country. This webinar is hosted by Council as part of our commitment to net zero by 2050, which is outlined in Council's Climate-Wise Hornsby plan. Tonight's webinar will be presented by Brent Clark from Wattblock. Brent's been working for over 12 years with apartment residents and strata residents, working with them on energy and solar projects. So we'll have time for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions as we go along, please write your questions in the chat. And I'll hand over to Brent. Hi, Brent.
Hi, Lana. Thanks so much for inviting me, and great to be here for Unlocking Solar for Strata. So there's a term that a lot of people have started to recognize, which is called electrification. And originally people would have said, well, we've already got electricity connected to our apartment buildings. Why do we need to do electrification when they're already connected to electricity? Well, the idea to improve the sustainability of the strata buildings is to increase the amount of electric equipment in the building by adding things like solar, photovoltaics, and batteries. And then these can feed other electric equipment such as electric vehicles or hot water heat pumps, which enables us to get off other fossil fuels such as petrol, diesel, and gas. So that's why solar and now batteries are so important to the overall electrification process for our apartment buildings. Now, we've got some challenges in our owners' corporations in New South Wales, and the challenges to doing electrification can involve split incentives between owner-occupiers and owner-investors when it comes to voting on things like solar panels or batteries. In Strata, we don't often have great communication through the different tiers of people in the apartment buildings. We've got tenants, we've got owner-occupiers, we've got owner-investors, we've got strata manager. Some of our strata buildings will have a facilities manager as well. And not all the information flows through all of those different stakeholders. So we have a bit of a lack of information, and sessions like this, sponsored by Hornsby Council, try to help with education and information and awareness. But other challenges we've got are access to finance in strata, and for a small percentage of our strata buildings, embedded networks can also be another challenge. And if you've got an embedded network, you'll know because you'll have a single energy retailer for all the apartments as well as the common areas in the building. But the first question is, why would we put solar and batteries into apartment buildings? And here's a whole host of reasons. Clean electricity, lower bills. If we have batteries, we can start to be improving our energy security. There are already some strata buildings that have put in batteries to keep sump pumps running in the basement car park when there's a power outage, so that the basement car park doesn't flood and damage the vehicles. And then other benefits, we're reducing our fossil fuel reliance, reducing carbon emissions, and we're taking demand out of the grid because we're producing that electricity locally. And when you make electricity locally, you also save on distribution losses, the losses in electricity of moving it from the Hunter Valley, say down to Sydney. So there are a number of background steps that you need to check if you want to do solar for your apartment building. And these include uh, checking the roof condition. What's the waterproofing like? Do we have shading on our apartment building? What's the state of our switchboard and what are our meters like? Are they still from the 1960s or the 1970s? And then we want to determine what our daytime electricity usage is and identify a size of a solar system in kilowatts. We want to develop a business case, take that to our owners corporation to get approval for it. We'll have to go out and get competing quotes, assess those, decide on a vendor, commission and install the system. And then after it's installed, we'll have to maintain it and, clean the solar panels, perhaps have a compliance inspection, etc. So just to give a little bit of a background, to give us some rules of thumb. We've got a little picture here on the right, and that's a solar system that is 30 kilowatts in size. Now, if we get our energy bill, remember on our energy bill, we're billed for kilowatt hours. So what's the relationship between a 30 kilowatt solar system on a roof of an apartment building and the amount of energy in kilowatt hours that will be produced over the course of the sunny part of a day? And in Sydney, the rule of thumb is 4. In fact, it's actually not your thumb, it's the other 4 fingers on your hand. 4 times the size of the solar system in kilowatts gives you roughly the amount of kilowatt hours which is produced by that system over the sunny part of an individual day. So if you've got a 30 kilowatt solar system, that'll produce about 120 kilowatt hours of energy per day. Now, what's the next thing is for us to get a little bit of an idea around what the size of these solar panels are and how many of those we can fit on the roof. So each solar panel is roughly 2 meters by 1 meter. You can have panels which are the same size that produce more or less electricity with it for that same size panel. So you could have a 460 watt panel or a 570 watt panel, but they're both the same size. So, but as a rule of thumb, maybe 2 panels makes up 1 kilowatt of solar. So that means you need about 4 square meters for each kilowatt of solar. So the higher the performance panel, the more it produces per square meter, the more expensive typically that panel is. And like you can even get now a bifacial solar panel that actually captures sunlight both on the front and the back if it's on a tilt frame. And that might produce 670 watts, or it might be a 670 watt peak performance panel. Now, the average cost per watt of installing solar on strata buildings is higher than it is for houses. And that's mainly because we have a couple of extra dimensions when it comes to cost. We've got the cost of getting the panels up to strata rooftops, which might be higher or more dangerous than standalone houses, and we might need lifting equipment, might need scissor lifts, scaffolds, cranes, and then also we might have longer cable runs to get back to our common area electricity meters or our apartment electricity meters, which might be on the ground floor, and we might have to do other items like upgrading electricity meters, upgrading circuit breakers on our main switchboard. We might also need to do some roof repairs or waterproofing touch-up, or even a full waterproofing replacement before the panels go down. So the average cost per watt of solar installed on a strata building is $1.31 per watt, and that compares with about 85 cents per watt installed on a standalone house. But don't fear, because this cost of $1.31 per watt in Australia is still lower than the cost per watt for installing solar on a standalone house in the United States of America. So we're the world leader in terms of cost per watt for solar installed. Now we're going to have a look at 4 different models for installing solar onto apartment buildings. And this is actually Avanti Apartments here in Hornsby, which has the 51 kilowatt solar system for the common areas on the roof installed on top of it. So the first model for doing solar is to do individual solar or solar battery systems for individual units. And this would probably work if you're in more of a townhouse or a villa estate. Typically in strata buildings that are townhouses or villas, the rooftop is still common property. So you can't go and install solar on that roof, even though it's directly above maybe your townhouse, without strata approval. But the idea in these setups is to have a separate system that connects to the unit meter and is offsetting the unit load and a separate system for each apartment. So here we've got a set of 8 townhouses, and we're looking from the top, and you can see there are 2 townhouses that have installed their own individual solar system. And over time, there's space that more of these townhouses can do their own individual solar system, and they're just installing at their own pace when the owner wants to install. If the bylaw is set up for this building, and it's a universal bylaw, not one where you need a separate bylaw for each consecutive install, then over time people will just install at their own pace when they want to join the renewable energy revolution. Now, the second way to look at doing solar for apartment buildings is to do solar or solar battery system for the common property only. And here you can see multiple panels on the roof, and they're just coming down to the common load and offsetting this common load, which, as we get into bigger size buildings, like a lot of underground basement car park and lighting and ventilation and lifts, you're using the solar to offset the cost of running gyms, pools, spas, etc. So here's an example of a common area solar system on a high rise. This is mounted flat because as you get to higher buildings, the wind speed gets quite significant, so it can be safer to do a flat solar on high-rise buildings, which we would typically say over 9 stories. Here's an example of a battery as well that's connected to that solar system that's actually just in a spare room on the rooftop of that building. Then the third way to look at doing solar for gateway. And what you can do here is you have a single solar system on the roof, and it connects to this solar sharing gateway, and that can connect to the individual units or to the individual units and the common property. And we'll have a look on the next slide at an example of this. This is a solar sharing system. This one is the Illume Energy Soul Share. And this is what it looks like. It's a box that's about this size that sits on the side of the building. This is the inverter for the solar system, and this is the solar system on top of this in 70s townhouse here. So Illume Energy created the Soul Share system. They're the first global company to develop a solar sharing system for apartment buildings. It came out of Melbourne. I think they've actually gone more than 10,000 apartments connected. Now, there are 15 apartments that can be connected to each soul share. If you've got more shares for 60 apartments, you can connect the common property meter as a single phase or 3-phase. And this system is actually taking measurements of the load on all the meters in the building multiple times a second, And it maintains a cloud-based accounting ledger to measure where the solar is distributed. And you can, in software, you can set whether you want even split across all the apartments, or if you've got a big difference between the unit entitlements of 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and studios in the same building, you can actually set percentages that reflect the unit entitlements to make the solar distribution fair and equitable on a year. Them to try and even up solar that goes to each person. So if you go away for 2 weeks, you won't get as much solar distributed to your apartment in that 2-week period. And when you come back, they'll push more solar your way. And the good thing is you still pick your own energy tariff and your own energy retailer. So that's the Sol Share, and that's the system that's used with 80% or more of the New South Wales solar for apartment resident rebate applications. A company that's moved into this space, also from Melbourne. They're called Zico Energy. They've got a system called Marshall. But at this point in time, we're not aware of any installs of that system in Sydney. And we think that when they come from Melbourne, they're going to go first to Newcastle and Wollongong before coming to the big smoke. Now, the fourth way to do solar on an apartment building is via an embedded network. And we mentioned earlier that if you're from an apartment building, you'll know if you've got an embedded network. It's a system where you've got a gate meter in front of all the other meters, the apartment meters and the common area meter in the building. And it is possible to connect a single solar system down into that gate meter, and then the billing and administration system that's run by your embedded network company can apportion, like put the credits onto the individual apartment bills and the common area bills for the solar that's consumed inside the building. But as I said, it's only 1% of strata buildings, typically newer, larger strata buildings that were constructed in the last 10 or 15 years. But there are some embedded networks in Hornsby, LGA, in places like even Mount Colah. Here's an example of from the western suburbs of Sydney, a big site that's an embedded network site that has solar and batteries, and they've got a battery room. They've got over 200 kilowatt hours of battery sucking up the solar from all those solar panels on those rooftops there. Now, the next thing is waterproofing. The solar panels last for 25 to 30 years, which is typically longer than the waterproofing lifespan, which might be 15 years. Here's an example of a building that's gone through a 3-stage process. So basically, this is their original roof condition. They decided to put down a new triple layer waterproofing, which was a very expensive job. And this is the triple layer waterproofing after it's a little bit older and it's discolored a bit, with the solar panel system on top of it, but using ballast to weight it down so that they're not penetrating the new waterproofing membrane and keeping the top floor apartments free of water leaks. So it is possible to ballast mount the racking system for a solar system. Here's another one, and you can see very clearly under here, this solar system has all these concrete ballast blocks just weighting down the racking system, and that way you're not penetrating through this waterproofing membrane and keeping, reducing your risk of water penetration. But it is more expensive to do ballast weighted solar typically than it is to do anchor point, where you just drill into the slab or drill into a wooden cross beam by moving a tile for the racking system. Now, the next thing is, how do we get the solar panels to the roof? It's interesting, some of our older apartment buildings actually have better roof access than our newer apartment buildings. So in the 60s and the 70s, sometimes there was a lift. If you've got a lift, there was a lift overrun and a little fire escape where you can just like walk up the fire escape, open a door and go out onto the roof. But from the 90s onward, we stopped doing lift overruns and we moved to roof hatches. And then sometimes it's harder to get solar panels up that last mile through the roof hatch. So you might have to use like a hoist, like we see on the right, or a crane, or build a scaffold, or use the scissor lift to get the solar panels up to the roof of our apartment block. Now, there's one other technology. We spoke earlier. What's what's the shading impact that's on your strata rooftop? A lot of the time, strata rooftops stand above the tree line, but there are a lot of strata buildings that still have canopy that are shading them partially or potentially the majority of their roof space. So there are two different types of inverters because our solar panels make DC power, and that's got to be converted over to AC power for use with the appliances and electrical equipment in the building. And the string inverter is fine where you don't have any shading on the rooftop, but it doesn't perform as well um, because these panels are in serial with each other. If one panel gets shaded, you reduce the performance of all the panels in that string. Um, a better approach, if you've got shading effects, is to use either microinverters or DC optimizers to minimize the effect. And under that model, every panel is really its own separate solar system. The batteries that you install into strata buildings are typically, well, basically everyone's installing lithium ion batteries. There are other battery chemistries, zinc bromide or vanadium redox or even hydrogen batteries, but everyone that does a battery in strata is installing a lithium ion or a lithium ion phosphate now battery. Here are some common brands. And here are some pictures of different brands of batteries installed into strata buildings. And so there's a range of battery brands that are now sitting in our strata buildings here in New South Wales. Now, there are some conditions on where batteries can be located. So they can't be put inside any habitable rooms, in ceiling cavities, in wall cavities, on roofs, unless there's like a really easy access, pedestrian access onto the roof, like for a recreational area. They can't be put under stairways, under access walkways, or in evacuation or escape routes. And you've got some bans on how close they can be to entries or exits, or windows or ventilation openings or gas vents. So they're all the things that you've got to look at when you're trying to pick a location for your battery. They can be installed inside the like the car park area. But we'll note later on that there's a new New South Wales government rebate that's coming for batteries that can be reduce the cost of it. And to be eligible for that, you've got to install the batteries outside, physically outside the strata building. What approvals do you need for different size batteries? So up to 20 kilowatt hours, they're exempt. You don't need any approval from your local council. If the battery is between 20 and 100, you need a complying development certificate. So you've got to hire an independent certifier to do that and submit that to council. If it's between 100 and 200 kilowatt hours, you need a development application. And in residential buildings, you're not allowed to install more than 200 kilowatt hours, full stop. Now, where it gets a little bit complicated in strata is if you have multiple batteries for multiple townhouses, someone on the strata committee has got to be keeping track of the total installed capacity of batteries because, for example, just say you had 5 townhouses install a 20 kilowatt hour battery and they only needed a complying development certificate, but then the 6th townhouse wants to install a 20 kilowatt hour battery, then that actually pushes you over 100, and that 6th townhouse is going to have to apply for a development application from your local council. That's our understanding of how it works at the current point in time. We're hoping that this will get cleaned up a little bit over time, and you'll be able to install larger batteries without getting compliant development certificates or development applications. What's the impact of installing a battery? We've got two graphs here. We've got the on this page, we've got the load of a common area meter that's already got solar installed in the middle of the day. So this is midday, and you can see this curve here is due to the solar system being installed. And then if you add a 13.5 kilowatt hour battery and then you discharge it with the excess solar being put into it during the middle of the day, it gets you through to like the battery is drained by just after 11. But here's an example of, we'll just go forward, adding twice as big a battery at a site where you're throwing off excess solar. And this shows you, this battery would still have some benefit going until 4 a.m. in the morning. So trying to get the right size battery to go with your right size of solar system is the challenge in our Strata buildings. Now, there's two different payment models for Strata. The most common, by far the most common, is to own the solar system outright. The owner's corporation pays for the solar system unless it's individual townhouse solar, in which case individuals are paying for it. But there is another thing called a power purchase agreement, or a PPA. This is solar finance. Under this model, what you're doing is you're giving another party the right to own the solar system that's on your roof for a period of time, say 10 years, and they'll sell you electricity off that solar system at an agreed rate for the first 10 years. Then after that 10-year period, you might take ownership of it and own it for the next 15 years of its lifespan. And in that 15-year period that you own it, you keep all the benefit, and effectively you've got free solar from that point onwards. But power purchase agreements are not very common at all. And if you're going for something like the New South Wales Solar for Apartment Residents rebate, you're not able to take out a PPA to finance the other section of the solar system that's not paid for by the New South Wales government rebate. Now, what are the federal government incentives related to solar? We've got small-scale technology certificates, and these have been around since the John Howard period, and they apply to solar systems that are under 100 kilowatts in size. And then you've got large-scale generation certificates, which apply to solar systems that are over 100 kilowatts, and it's extraordinarily rare for any strata to do a system that falls into this category. Assume that you'll be in this category of federal government rebate with a solar system that's under 100 kilowatt hours in strata. There's only a couple in the whole state that have taken this particular route. Now, the next rebate is the Federal Cheaper Home Batteries rebate. Came out July 2025, and this has been extraordinarily successful in terms of batteries. Hundreds of thousands of batteries have been installed since 1st of July 2025. It was so successful that from the 1st of May, they've actually pulled back the amount of rebate that people are getting for larger size batteries. At the current time, people are lobbying the federal government to try and get this reinstated specifically for strata buildings, that they can get bigger batteries without the carve-outs with the smaller decreases in the battery rebate. But at this point in time, there's so much demand for this program from standalone houses that probably wouldn't happen until demand starts to soften from the standalone houses that are putting in these hundreds of thousands of batteries. Now, to qualify for this federal cheaper home battery, the batteries need to be virtual power plant capable, but you don't actually need to sign them up to a virtual power plant. And these can be installed inside the strata building these batteries, and you can get this federal rebate, like putting them in the car park area, which is different from what we'll see with the upcoming state rebate. So, what are the New South Wales government rebates that apply to solar and batteries? We've got the peak demand reduction scheme for batteries. If you connect a battery to a virtual power plant program, you'll get a one-time incentive of $1,500 from the New South Wales government just for connecting it up. You might get another small incentive in year 3 if you remain in the virtual power plant. But also under this peak demand reduction scheme, from 1st of September, there'll be a new peak demand reduction scheme PDRS rebate on batteries, which are installed into strata schemes with 4 or more apartments. And what that will mean, that can be stacked with the federal government cheaper home batteries. And where, a rule of thumb is you might have got 30% off the cost of your battery with the federal cheaper home batteries. If you add this New South Wales government rebate, maybe it'll take you up to 50% off the cost of the battery. And then the other rebate that's really important for Strata up until the 4th of December 2026 is the Solar for Apartment Residents rebate. And this is a 50% rebate just on the solar component of not the batteries. And it only applies if the owner's corporation pays for all the solar and it connects every individual apartment in the building up at the same time with the same solar installer. That's available until the 4th of December. We'll just go over what is a virtual power plant, because this is quite confusing. I was trying to explain it to a friend of mine who already had a solar system on his house and already had a battery, and he was confused about it on the weekend. So what a virtual power plant is, it relates to your battery only, not to the solar system. If there's a heat wave day and there's a brownout or a blackout, you're giving someone else the right to discharge the power in your battery on those specific days, but they'll pay you for it because that's a day that energy is really in demand because of the brownout or the blackout. You can't do the virtual power plants with solar sharing systems at the moment, but you could do it if you had an individual solar and battery for a townhouse, or if you had a common area solar and battery for your common areas or your house lights electricity meter. Now, there are multiple different virtual power plant programs. Sometimes you'll get it from your energy retailer if it's, say, Origin or AGL, but there might be other independent virtual power plant programs that aren't energy retailers, that are just virtual power plant programs, maybe a Shine Hub or something like that. So, so that's the New South Wales gives you an incentive of up to $1,500 just to connect a battery one time to one of these 16 different virtual power plant programs. But that's not related. You're still going to get paid for the money that gets discharged from your battery on those heatwave days, in addition to that New South Wales government incentive. And then this is the newest one that's coming from the New South Wales government from the 1st of September. If you put your battery outside, if you don't have a battery at the moment, you put your battery outside. If your battery is between 20 kilowatt hours and 200 kilowatt hours, and what you can do is apply for this rebate on that battery, which can be stacked on top of the federal cheaper home batteries rebate. Here's a little calculator if people want to click through. Lana will be sending out this presentation to everyone tomorrow, so you can click through and have a look at what that might mean for your strata building. The New South Wales Solar for Apartment Residents rebate, so it's a $25 million grant program. I think only $8 or $9 million has been given out so far, so there's still plenty of opportunity for people in Hornsby LGA to get on board with this program. Now, To get this, you need between 3 lots and 55 lots. If you've got 56 or more, don't bother. It doesn't apply to commercial lots. If you've got a mixed-use building where you've got commercial lots on the ground floor and residential above, you can only connect up the residential apartments, not the commercial lots, and go for this grant. You need to have the payback under 10 years. You can connect up the common area meter, but it can't take more than 40% of the solar generated. Um, the balance of the system has to be paid by the owners corporation, so on unit entitlements. You can do a couple of you can get some rebate against um, uh, additional works like smart meter upgrades or switchboard upgrades or some a little bit of waterproofing under the solar system, but you can't waterproof your whole roof and claim that. It applies to Class 1A or Class 2 strata buildings. It doesn't apply to company title. You've got to make sure that not more than 30% of the solar feeds into the grid. And you need to get 2 quotes from competing solar installers. And we would highly recommend this because it's a great opportunity for people living in strata. We don't think this one will be repeated. We think this is a one-time offer. A couple of years ago, the New South Wales government did an EV charging grant for strata buildings, and it hasn't been repeated. We think this will be in that same category. So make sure you apply before the 4th of December if you're interested in this. Now, how are we going to pay for the solar system in our strata building? We've got the Capital Works Fund. If that's not strong enough, we can take out a special levy. If that's not tenable, you can perhaps take out strata finance. The Clean Energy Finance Corporation has partnered with one particular strata financier called Lanark. And I think I heard of a strata building getting something like an 8% interest rate the other day from Lanark Strata Finance for to enable one of these shared solar systems to go in under the New South Wales SOAR program. And effectively, those two things together make it a $0 down proposition for your owners corporation. What to look for in solar installers? Are they a New Energy Tech Consumer Code approved? And are they Solar Australia accredited? Have they SAA? That used to be called CEC accredited, but they changed the name of it to SAA accredited. Check how long they've been in business. Check they're local and they're trustworthy. Look up their ABN number. Look for some references where they've installed on similar strata buildings. Try not to get a solar installer that's doing their first ever strata building. Make sure they visit your building in order to quote. Don't let them quote remotely. And also check whether is it a situation where they have their own staff or do they subcontract the installation. So here's a link to a page that's got a number of solar installers that have done strata buildings before, and you can see that they're accredited for things like the Illum Energy solar sharing system, etc., to help you with finding solar installers to quote. But they're under a lot of demand because of all these grant programs. So sometimes Strata say we've got to contact 6 solar installers to get 2 or 3 quotes because a lot of them are just too busy to quote. From February 2021, when it comes to approving these, voting to approve these solar installations, it's been made easier in New South Wales. So we're in the group of the best states to vote for this as owners corporations. What happened is they changed the Strata Schemes Management Act in New South Wales to create what's called a sustainability infrastructure resolution, and that lowers the voting threshold. In other states which don't have this, you need a special resolution at 75% based on unit entitlements. But here the threshold in New South Wales has been lowered to 50%, so it's easier to get this voted through in your owners corporations in New South Wales. Now, who do we need? Who are the archetypes? Who do we need on our strata committee or our solar subcommittee to successfully do one of these projects. Have a think about this. Everyone is probably stronger in one of these different skill sets. You know, are you a bean counter? Are you a retired accountant? Are you the greenie? Are you a retired engineer or a current engineer, a tinkerer? Or are you more like an IT guy and, you're good with setting up your own Wi-Fi networks and all that sort of thing? The strata committees that are most successful in getting these programs across the line typically have at least two. Some of them even have three. I don't think I've ever seen one building that's got all four of these on the strata committee at the same time. But the more you have, the easier it gets to communicate to the residents and build the case for doing solar on your apartment building. A little case study just to finish up here. Even small apartments can do this. This is a little block of 5 on the North Shore in Sydney, and they've got a little shared solar system, and they've even used flexible, lightweight solar panels to fit a curved roof on top of this. So quite an innovative little project there and the lower North Shore. Where are the strata schemes in Hornsby with solar installed? We know there's at least a dozen of them. This is the Electrify Strata map for Hornsby. It's searchable off our website, and you're able to go and find, click on the Google map and actually click on these drop pins and find out where those strata buildings are in Hornsby LGA that already have solar installed. And now we're just at the wrap up section. We've got some more resources here. I'll just point out this picture is taken at Hawkins Hall in Thornlea, and there's a little kids' playground out the front of that. So if anyone's holding a little kid's birthday party, it's a great place in Thornlea to book out in Hornsby LGA. And this is a great way to train the next generation on the importance of solar panels and electric vehicle charging if they play with the equipment here. I actually just happened to cross it because I went to my niece's birthday party at that Hawkins Hall there. So the other materials that we've got that you might want to have a look at, online training course. We've got over 150 videos on sustainability in Strata, and there are a lot of solar videos or battery videos included in that. Sorry, 1 second. This website has a list of all the grants and rebates that are available to strata buildings in New South Wales, and we've also got that list of solar installers we talked about before. Now, what Hornsby Council is doing is they're offering some support to people that come to this webinar for the next 7 days. If you want to scan this QR code that's on the screen, that would take you, or you don't have to scan it now, you can scan it off the presentation that gets emailed out to you tomorrow. But that takes you to a WhatsApp group called Electrify Strata Hornsby. And I'll be in that group for the next 7 days if you want to post a question, and I'll try and get back to you and answer your question. I've just got to point out that this WhatsApp group is not moderated by Hornsby Council. It's moderated by WattBlock, but they're offering this support because sometimes there are extra questions that you might think of after we finish this session that that you might want to post into that group. So now I'm not sure if Lana's been able to rejoin us or not.
Sorry, I have Brent.
Great.
Sorry, my internet
Excellent.
connection did not want to cooperate tonight. But
Okay.
yeah, I jumped back on. I think I missed maybe a few minutes, sorry. But
Okay.
yeah, that's been great. Thanks so much for the presentation, Brent. That's a lot of information, a lot of really practical things that people living in apartments need to think about. So, if anyone, we do have about 10 minutes left. So, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. And we'll try and get to a couple of your questions now. But otherwise, yeah, that's fantastic that Brent's going to be available through the Electrify Strata Hornsby WhatsApp group, because I'm sure people will have questions. We do have one question here, Brent, from Lita, who I think it was from earlier in your presentation when you were talking about some of the first steps to installing solar. She said, are there any companies who are accredited to perform the feasibility assessment of a building?
Yeah. So, look, we'll be fair. There's a whole market of people that can do solar feasibility studies for strata buildings, and Watt Block is one of those companies. But if you want to search, Waverley Council actually has a list of about 10 different companies on their website. So you can search for that list of companies that you could hire to do a solar feasibility study for your apartment building.
And I was just thinking, you also talked about the structural assessment. So that would be potentially the same consultant or maybe a different consultant.
Yeah, usually it's actually a different consultant. So you usually that would be like someone that's a qualified structural engineer. So the most common uh, time that you would engage a structural engineer is if maybe you've got a 1960s or 1970s red brick or white brick walk up as your strata, and it's got a tiled roof, a pitched tile roof, and you've got wooden cross beams holding up the tiles on that roof. So that would be that's the most common scenario where you might hire first a structural engineer to do a weight loading assessment on the ability of that tiled pitched roof to hold the extra weight of the solar panels. Typically, the concrete roofs, people don't, the flat concrete roofs, people don't typically take out a structural engineer, but in we can't say that like definitively because you might have a special case and you might want to check that you don't have concrete cancer or something like that as well. So in that case, there could be an opportunity that you get a structural engineer to come and check out your roof, or perhaps you've got a metal roof and it might be beyond its like an older tin or ColourBond roof, and it's time to replace that as well. Now, if anyone is upgrading their roof, always go to ColourBond as the best roof type to install solar on. So if you've got an old tile roof and you're going to upgrade your roof, always go to ColourBond. It's the best roof for the future for installing solar onto.
Just on that topic, there is another question from Ian just saying, does a tiled roof need special waterproofing for installation of panels?
It's actually, we've got over 3 million rooftop solar systems in Australia, and the most common rooftop to install on is tile. So don't be fearful that they're like the solar installers, if they're doing the job correctly, they will do the correct waterproofing on those tiled roofs. And you will break tiles. That's unavoidable. You'll break some tiles. You might not be able to get the same matching ones for the old building, but a good solar installer will be able to do the solar install on a tiled roof that is watertight.
Thanks. Thanks, Brent. There is another question from Rod. What would you recommend as the best approach for an owner to take this to their OC?
So from 1st of July 2025 onwards, every AGM has a standard motion that's required where the owners corporation has to address sustainability. And what a lot of people don't realize is if you're any owner in the building, regardless of whether you're on the strata committee or not, can actually submit a motion into an AGM. Now, the trick is you've always got to get it. You need to know when your AGM is coming, and then you've got to send your, motion, or it can be a separate motion, or it can be ask the strata manager to put this topic under that special mandated motion on sustainability in the AGM. And that's one way now, because the New South Wales government has basically put a circuit breaker into every AGM that we've got to consider sustainability for a couple of minutes each year from now onwards. The other thing is also last year they changed the every time in New South Wales, strata buildings need to have a capital works fund plan. And you might not update that every year, but if you update it, say, every 3 years, every time you update that capital works plan from now on, you have to consider sustainability in it. So that's another place. So the New South Wales government's done two things to try and make it easier for you to raise this in your owners corporation. The other thing is, do you have a WhatsApp group for your own apartment building, perhaps to improve communication? And you might actually want to set up a WhatsApp group and invite other people in the building into it. And over time, it becomes very useful to communicate with other people. You can raise it in that area. So the other thing I tell people, if you're not on Strata Committee, join Strata Committee. Go to the next AGM, nominate yourself, join the Strata Committee, and then you're on the inside and you can help, move the agenda forward for your building.
Yeah, great idea. There's still a few more questions coming in, Brent.
Yep.
So we'll keep going for a few more minutes.
Yep.
The next one is from Chris. Does a ballasted system on a flat roof need analysis for wind load and ballast weight? And who does this?
Yeah. So remember, if you get one of those Solar Accreditation Australia SAA installers, which everyone that installs on a Strata will get one of those, then if you're in the Ausgrid area, which is everyone in Hornsby LGA, then every time your solar installer submits a grid application for a solar system, they actually have to do a wind speeds assessment and submit that. And so typically the solar installer will hire a structural engineer for wind speed sign off because that's mandatory. So you get that baked into the price of your solar system. What you don't get is the weight loading assessment. That's not mandatory. That's optional, and that's an election that your own strata building does based on, the factors. How old is your building, and what the state of and condition of your own strata building rooftop is. So the weight loading assessment, most strata buildings don't get the weight loading assessment done for a flat concrete roof, but you may have a situation where you have to judge, and I'm not a structural engineer, so that's something that you need to elect inside your own strata scheme based on the risk factor involved.
Yeah, thank you. Another question here from Ian, I think it is. Yeah. Do you think solar and battery is feasible for a fully rented block of 10 units with an off-site owner?
It's rare that building would do the project in normal times. With the New South Wales Solar for Apartment Residents rebate on offer until 4th of December, we've seen some crazy installs of solar on blocks like this, where the owner investors are actually trying to build property valuation uplift, because if you go and have a look at Domain, the online real estate group, they do a sustainability report every 2 years. And for example, if you've got this fully rented block of 10 units, which I'm guessing is like a 1970s red brick or white brick walk up. If, for example, you went and put solar and batteries in this building and you got electric vehicle charging accessible to everyone in the building, and you did double glazed windows next time those wooden windows are about to fall apart as a project, those projects would probably build about $100,000 worth of property valuation uplift for each unit. So you could make $1 million of property valuation uplift on that unit block. So the question is, for this particular unit block, if you could do those three projects for 600,000 and create $1 million worth of value, that is actually a lower risk financial proposition for the 10 owners that are off site than buying their next investment property, which we'll assume is another apartment in another red brick walk up. That's actually a lower risk investment with a higher capital upside than buying your next investment property in your next building. So, yeah, if you've got astute, rational financial actors, and if they're all present, if they can be offsite owners, but if they're present in Australia, it gets really difficult if those offsite owners live overseas in other countries because the communication just breaks down. But if a majority of those offsite owners are here in Australia, there's an economically rational argument to do it.
Excellent, thanks. I think we've got time for one final question, Brent. And this is from Ian again, just wondering how often do solar panels need cleaning and what might the cost be for a 3-story tiled rooftop for cleaning?
Right. Yeah. So, look, assume that you might clean the panels once a year. It depends again how much, how many overhanging trees, how leafy it is around your area, and the birds in your area. What we found is it's very expensive to hire a solar installer that actually installed the system to clean the panels. Sometimes they'll quote you like $17 per panel for a cleaning event. Whereas if you have a roofer that's coming to clean the gutters once a year, that roofer, it's not a technical job that the roofer can't do. If you ask that roofer who's already up there cleaning the gutters to clean the solar panels, then you'll probably get the solar panels cleaned on hourly rates rather than on per panel rates.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Brent. Well, I think we're going to call it a day here. So thanks so much, Brent. That was a really informative presentation, and I'm pretty sure you're going to get a few questions in the WhatsApp group. I also wanted to just plug our next webinar with Brent, which is on EV charging in Strata, and that's on Tuesday, the 1st of September, and you can register for that on Council's webpage. Okay, well, thanks very much, and thanks everyone for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Lana. Thanks, Hornsby Council.